Testing. Test. Test, 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 testing, test, test.
moderators. And even as early as 1749, before Vermont was a state, there was a moderator appointed. His name was Colonel William Williams, and he was appointed moderator for Bennington's first town meeting. 30 years later, when Vermont became an independent republic, the Vermont General Assembly ordered that towns meet at 10 a.m. on a day in March, and the first order of business was to, in fact, elect a town moderator. So I'm honored to be in that role tonight. Things have obviously changed since those days. This is not a pure town meeting, as you all know. We will be voting by what we call Australian ballot tomorrow morning, starting at 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I have that correct? And in this very building. So varies about how we do this, but I say we recess at the end of this meeting until tomorrow morning when we vote formally. Some people say we should adjourn the meeting and do it that way, but by tradition, I'm doing it the Norwich way. So we do call this an informational meeting, which it is, but in my view, that indicates a one-way street, i.e. you receive information from our elected officials. And I think that the tradition of town meetings has always been that there's an engagement between elected officials and you, the public, hence why I call it the people's meeting. How it's going to work tonight, here's the plan. We'll be having presentations by the select board and the school board. Those will be about between 15 and 20 minutes, followed by a period of questions, if you have them, directly for the school board or the select board. We're also going to be hearing from our elected representatives tonight, Rebecca Holcomb and Jim Maslin, for about 5 minutes each. We're actually going to start the evening with those two. And after the presentations that I just mentioned, we will go through the ballot measures 1 and 2, which are the general budget. I'm sorry, we have a new audio system, which I don't have to, I can be back here, and you can, right? You can still hear me, right? Still works. I want to thank the town staff for this wonderful improvement from last year. In any case, I'm going to go through ballot measures 1 and 2 first, and then, I know this is a curveball, so get ready for this, and take a note if you would like. After we do ballot measures 1 and 2, we're going to do 29, 30, and 31. Why? Because the way that the select board organized the ballot, or whoever did the exact organization, put the school board measures, the school measures, at the very end. Since that's very important information and very important possible topic of discussion, I wanted to do that early in the evening. But I know it's a curveball, and a few years ago I did go out of order, and that caused a lot of consternation in the room, so I want to get it out right now. I am changing the order slightly. After that point, we're going to start at ballot measure 3 and go all the way to the end of the night. Because, again, this is the people's meeting, you will all have the opportunity to speak and engage, but of course we have to have a control on that. And so I am, as I've done in the past, allowing for between 2 and 3 minutes of public comment. You address your comments to the chair, i.e. me, of the meeting, and not our elected officials. I expect a civil discussion, as it always has been since I've been moderator, and I've been very happy for that. However, I do have this, and I can cut you off if I need to, because some of us have to go home to our kids and our pets and everything else, so we don't want to be here all night. Technically, we have 2 hours. Sometimes we go to 9, sometimes we don't, in my own experience. So, with that in mind, we are going to get started, we're going to get started, and I'm going to ask State Representative Rebecca Holcomb to come up and speak for 5 minutes first. Thank you, Rebecca.
And Jim Maslin as well.
Yes, Jim will be following.
First of all, thank you. It's great to be here. I know the world feels like it's crazy right now, and I appreciate the incredible efforts of our local leaders to try to build stability and continuity and make sure our communities are functioning well, even as we're facing pretty significant change at the state and the federal level. This is an act of faith in this moment where democracy feels under threat everywhere. I appreciate Peter's great faith that we're going to be very quick, and that's also something that I hope That was supposed to be a joke, everybody. Anyway, I want to just thank you. I want to thank you for the privilege of representing you. I want to thank you for the trust that you feel in me as we are in this very unprecedented moment. I hear daily from you about some of the challenges. You may know that Vermont is now the state with the highest healthcare costs in the nation. That means we're the highest healthcare costs in the world at this point. And when you hear things like that, it can feel very, very overwhelming. And some of the challenges we have as a state are a driving challenge for everybody. It makes our school board's job hard. It makes our select board's job hard. And fixing these problems is not easy. We did put a handout in the back of the room. You feel free to grab it out, particularly if you're eligible for Medicare or Medicare Advantage. You might be interested in some of the work we've done. This is hard work. You know, I thank Michael Costa. I don't know where you are. You've been really leaning into the budget process in the hospitals. This is going to be all hands on deck everywhere. We're not going to get saved by the federal government at this point. It is going to be hard work by Vermonters in each of our communities, trying to make our communities better for all of us. So thank you to our local elected leaders, but thank you to all of you for the ideas and the support you've done. I'm going to focus mostly on what's happening with respect to education, because while our select board is doing a fantastic job in dealing with constraints around healthcare and limited transportation funds, the issue that I'm hearing most about from Norwich is education, and what are we doing on education in the legislature, and how is that going to affect our community here. You may remember that at the end of last session, we passed a bill called Act 73. I'm seeing some nods, so I think people know that this was a big bill that said we are going to change how we fund education in the state of Vermont. And instead of having budget votes where we go to the polls and we say, yes, school board, thank you very much, we like that budget, we're now talking about having the state decide how much is spent per pupil. We are also talking about mergers. Big mergers. Act 46 said we want school districts of 4,000 to 8,000 kids. To give you a little context of what that means in a rural area, Windsor County would be about the size of a 4,000 student school district. So we're talking about pretty big districts, and the governor's been pretty clear that the savings come, in his opinion, from closing schools. So there's a lot of change, and obviously this has people pretty worked up. We did have that bill passed, and we are looking at what we do. There was a redistricting task force. I did serve on that over the summer. I actually voted against Act 73 because, having worked in education and school governance my entire life and having read the research, there is no evidence that doing what we're talking about in this bill is going to save money or it's going to reduce or improve quality of education. What we did in the redistricting task force is say, hey, we know our affordability issues are real. We know many of our communities are struggling to provide kids with the support they need. We can't wait till some improbable day certain in the future. We need to start right now. So what we talked about is regional shared services. There are things that are better provided at scale and that can be provided collaboratively across school districts now, but instead of trying to go through a longer merger process. Unfortunately, even though this is what we are doing for healthcare, the governor has been very clear, and he came back to the legislature and said, unless the legislature votes for maps by the end of this session, he will veto the budget. So we are expecting to continue to have this debate. So where are we now? There are maps sitting in the House that won't make it out of House Education. There are some maps sitting in the Senate that are unlikely to make it out of the Senate. I can't tell you. We have a letter in the back that reviews how we got here, but we can't tell you where we're going to get up because politically there is no path forward that has consensus or broad support right now. There's some talk now that even if we don't get mergers, we might do the new foundation plan. And I got to tell you, I think your school board is going to probably talk about that, but that's a big change for this town. Because the way that plan works is instead of you deciding, as I said, how much to spend per kid, the state will tell you how much to spend per kid. And in the bigger district, those decisions will be made about where that money goes and how it goes. In our section of the state, and it's probably partly historical, maybe it's that we have higher salaries and we've privileged that, and then when the state leveled up healthcare costs and everyone had the same healthcare statewide, we are now a pretty high-cost region. And in fact, all of the schools in our region are likely to see pretty significant cuts if this goes forward. So there's a lot there we need to figure out, because that could have pretty significant impacts on our community. Those are the things that we are working through right now. We have been working very, very hard to do due diligence and to push back to make sure that when we come here, we can tell you that what we're doing is better for your kids, better for the community, and better for the state of Vermont. I can't do that right now. And I also can't say I think mergers are a good idea when I know from my own experience that it takes 3 to 5 years to do a merger and do it well in a way that doesn't do damage. And this bill requires us to merge 119 school districts in 1 year. It isn't possible. So we're going to continue to work on that, continue to push back, and try to make sure that we really are addressing the challenge of affordability, but doing it in a way that makes sense and is durable, but also leaves our kids and communities better off. As your school board talks to you, there's another problem that they're trying to deal with. They're trying to make good, stable decisions that keep your community strong and that provide good business management of our schools and our community for perpetuity. They're not responsible just for today. They're responsible for making sure this system is around for the families who live here in 20 years. One of the things that we did last year was, after this community voted on its school budget, at the state level, we voted to use about $120 million in one-time surplus dollars to buy down the tax rate on the budgets that you'd already approved. So you went to vote, you voted through the budget, you thought you were going to get one tax rate, and what you ended up getting in your bill was a lot lower. But here's the problem. When you do that, we're not really saving money. Instead of investing in permanent affordability, we're giving you a one-time tax holiday. And guess what? That's where we are today. Back at the beginning of the budget cycle, as your school board was trying to figure out how to budget, in the December 1st letter, you may have read about that in the newspaper, everyone expected school spending to go up by 5.8% about, and the remainder of the bump, up to about a 12% average increase in your tax rate, was the effect of last year's one-time buy-down. On average, school districts have really been cutting hard to try to bring down costs. They're down to about 4.3% instead of that big 5.8 projected. And the remainder of the bump, again, was the decision to use one-time money. Now we're having that same conversation again about using one-time money, and the pressure is to use it to buy down tax rates, not to support, when you look at where there are districts that are desperately trying to consolidate and have no construction aid, and it would actually help them if we help them across. It would bring down costs permanently. That's not what we're talking about right now. So one of the things that we're trying to work through in the legislature is, if we have this one-time money again, this time it's only about 104, because the surplus funding from ARPA and the good times, that's all starting to dry up. How do we use this in a way to cushion and sort of wean us off that big bump, but do it slowly in a way that cushions our districts and keeps us out of this volatility in tax rates? Because every time we buy down big and then we have no money the next year, everyone talks about how much school taxes are going up. But they're not going up just because of the decisions of the school board. They're going up and down because of the decisions we're making at the state level. So I just need to say that, because your local school board is trying to govern and make smart business decisions in an incredibly volatile national environment where we're losing federal money as we sit here. You know that 45,000 Vermonters just lost subsidies on the ACA exchange, the Vermont exchange. This is an emergency. And we're talking about how to merge our school districts. We need to be focused on the priorities. I want to focus on our school boards. I want you to know they're doing the best they can to try to govern and lead our system through an unstable environment, and it's a really tough job. At the state level, we're going to have to try to do the same, and so you may hear more conversation about that in the second half of the session. But please be gentle. When things get mean and nasty at the federal level, we need to really sit down here and work extra hard to listen to each other and to learn from each other and try to get to solutions that actually work. So that's my plea. That's what democracy is about. We don't always get what we want. if we can learn how to listen to each other and work together and focus on real durable solutions, we're going to get what we need. So thank you for giving me the privilege of representing you in Montpelier. My name's Rebecca Holcomb. My email is here with Jim Maslin's. It's in the back of the room. Please reach out to me if you have suggestions and advice. We are better for all the ideas that you've given us. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you.
Hi there. Good volume? It's all right. Nice to see you all again. And as Rebecca said, it's a privilege and an honor to be here with you. Many of you, there's a lot of you at home on Zoom, I believe, watching us here. So, and I'll say it at the end, but I'll say it now. And we thrive on questions from you guys. There may not be that much time for questions this evening.
There won't be any tonight, Jim, but they can always reach out to you.
That's the point. We're always available, and that's what we thrive on. Peter Orner started with a little bit about town moderators. Just for fun, I'd like to add a little bit about select boards, select men. Most people may not know, but select men started it was men during the time of Henry VIII, when he absconded with parish financing in order to finance his wars in France. And there was nobody left to balance the budget. So men were selected to form a board who would then figure out how to pay for the expenses of the parishes. So here we are, and fast forward, we have had select boards in New England and in England from the very beginning, and now it's select men, and that works out. Select women as well, and that works out very, very well. We do better work, I think, when we're what should we say, men and women working together. But anyway, that's enough for public service for this evening, but I thought you might be interested in knowing where select boards came from. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Big Bad Beautiful Bill and its effect on Vermont. This is H.R. 1 in the House and Senate at the beginning of the Trump administration. And there are some very severe, if many of you know, cuts that have come forward from that bill that affect town budgets and state budgets, in particular, of course, school budgets, because there, as Rebecca said, there are great cuts in healthcare spending, cuts in Medicare spending, which all the schools draw down in order to fund things like student mental health, for one thing, and other things. And when those funds go away, we have to backfill as best we can with state resources, which is becoming increasingly difficult. Reach out to Rebecca or me or to your school board if you want to know about the effects of those things, but they're pretty catastrophic. Another thing is also there's great cuts in transportation funding that filter down to your town road crews and budgets with things like bridges and culverts and various other sorts of things. This is not a slouch. Those are very expensive things that we're trying to figure out how to help your towns backfill the budgets when it's possible. And I'd also like to say a little bit about Act 73. As Rebecca said, the bill calls for huge school districts that are going to operate very, very different in ways that to me are appalling. If we have a huge school district made up kind of on the fly, even if it's formal, of a board of people who don't know each other because it's from somebody from this town, someone from there, someone from somewhere else. The governance on these big school boards is going to be formally, you could trace it in statute, but you're going to have a bunch of people trying to make decisions about schools who don't know each other very well at all, if at all. And that's not the way we work here, as you know. Our local school boards work the way they work. Select boards work the way they work because we all know each other. We work each other. We know each other's issues, even if we don't talk about them formally at meetings. That it's who we are and it's what we do. And so to say that the Big Bad Beautiful Bill is having great effects on the state of Vermont. We've spent much time, Rebecca and I, in Ways and Means, trying to sort through changes is our job on federal tax law and how that affects Vermont tax law. And it's a difficult challenge all the way through. That's probably not what you most want to hear about this evening, but I'd just like you to know that's one of our challenges in Ways and Means and Finance in the Senate, and it's not an easy task that we're doing. We've, well, drinking from a fire hose is an old, well-worn statement that you all know about, but there's just so much to learn that is different this year. Not so much what the federal law says and what the Vermont law is going to say, but how is this going to affect you? It's our jobs to understand that and to figure out how to make the best of it and go forward. And I'm probably running close to my 5 minutes, but as I said before,
You're getting there.
Was that it? Anyway, we thrive on questions from you, and as I've said at repeated meetings, every time someone from one of our towns asks me something that I'm really not familiar with, I have to learn something new. And that's what we thrive on, really. It's who we are and it's what we do, and we are very glad to be part of this great state and you represent us in your towns. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Rebecca. Again, it's wonderful to hear from you both. A lot of us, myself included, don't get to engage with either of you, and this is one time a year that we hear from you. So I think it's important, but as both of them have indicated, they welcome you reaching out to them directly, and there's obviously many other occasions where you can engage and ask questions to either Rebecca or Jim. So we're going to get started now. I'm going to be a little tighter on the time. And I have granted 15 to 20 minutes for the town and the school board to present their presentations. We went with the school board first last year, so we alternate every year. So this year it's going to be Town Manager Brennan Duffy speaking on behalf of the Select Board and Norwich, and I hope he will also be introducing the board members who are present tonight as well. Thanks, Brennan.
All right, thank you very much, moderator Peter. I welcome everyone here. I appreciate everyone coming out tonight to listen to the information we have, and just wanted to mention that we have. Just wanted to. Sorry, is that better? Just wanted to mention we do have the town report, which is on the back table there as you came in the door. So if you walked in and didn't see that and would like to go back and get a copy of that to take home with you, we would hope you would do so. So I'm going to start out and just introduce our select board for Norwich. We have Chair Mary Layton. We have Vice Chair Kimo Griggs. And coming into his second year on the board, Matt Sweat. And completing her third-year term, Priscilla Vincent, who will also be coming off the board after this term ends tomorrow. And Marcia Calloway, who I believe has been here for 5 years and is also going to be coming off the board after the elections tomorrow. So, great team to work with for the town manager. What we've done in the years past, at least the 3 years that I've been doing this, has been to just do a real brief rundown of our personnel. Obviously, living here in the town, you probably aren't getting into Tracy Hall every day or on a regular basis. So just to kind of give people a heads up as to who's here, who our staff are that are serving you. So starting out in my office, we have Miranda Bergmeyer, our assistant town manager, who's been here for quite some time. And we were lucky enough to find an assistant who serves both the DPW and the town manager's office, kind of half and half. Her name is Britta Valens, and she's also in charge of putting together the meeting packets and posting things on the listserv. So you've probably seen her name. In the finance office, our finance director, Barry Rosalinda, is here still, and we have a new finance assistant who just started here at the beginning of the year, and his name is Jonathan De La Brio. In the planning department, our planning director, Stephen True, is with us, and Megan Anderson, who is also the assistant town clerk, has joined him on a part-time capacity to help him out. We had a retirement or resignation of Pam Mullen, who many of you may have known. She was here for about 19 years, and a wonderful woman who served the town well. Unfortunately, she has moved out of state with her family, so she retired a couple months ago and has moved down to North Carolina. And then in the rec department, as all of you probably are familiar with, Bree Swenson continues to serve as our director there. In the fire department, we have Chief Alex Northern, who's here tonight with us, Deputy Chief Matt Sweat, who I already introduced on the board, and roughly 20 volunteer firefighters. Police department, Matt Romei is our serving chief. We have Sergeant Stuart Rogers and Officer Michael Rebentish, who is here with us as well. If you haven't met Michael, he's been here a little over a year now, and great to have him in Norwich. We have one open full-time position right now in the police department, and then we also have a part-time officer who works usually a shift or two every week here as well. And then in September, we hired a new administrative assistant named Franny Willette, who, if you've stopped into the police department, you've met her, also a really nice woman and easy to communicate with. In the Public Works Department, Director Chris Kaufman continues to serve as our director. We have our working foreman, John McKinnon, and then, as I said, Britta Valens serves half her time in that department. We also have 4 equipment operators, Keith Waterman, Slava Frimmerman, Derek Waterbury, and Dylan Leonard. And Derek and Dylan just joined us in the summer of last year. So this is actually the first time where we have had a full slate of equipment operators in a long time. So we're really happy about that. And it's been a good winter to have a full crew here to get rid of all the snow we've had. We also have 2 building and grounds technicians. Ben Trussell, who's been here for over 20 years, is kind of our lead and head custodian of the building. And then we hired a gentleman named David Furman in November, who is helping out, and he'll be doing a lot of the field lining and rec work once we get into summer, hopefully soon. And then in the transfer station, the team there, Paul Albee is our lead, and Roger Fremont and Jed Smith are also there. Our elected officials working here in Tracy Hall, Lily Tryman, I always get that wrong, and her assistant Megan Anderson, who started in June. Treasurer Cheryl Lindberg is here tonight, and then in the lister's office, Cheryl again, Ernie Ciccatelli, and Pam Smith are our 3 elected listers. So now I'm going to morph into a little bit about the budget. So this is a process that begins really every fall, usually around late August, early September. Our finance director, Barry, and I start meeting with department heads, which usually goes through October. We start talking about their operational budgets for the coming year, and also their capital budgets and what they're looking at as far as any changes to our capital plan that we entered into about 3 years ago. It goes to the select board and kind of becomes a public discussion in early November, and then we normally have between 4 or 5, sometimes 6 public meetings that go really until January normally. That's when we approve the budget this year, the select board did. And that's the budget that's going to go to you to vote on tomorrow. And so one of the goals, and this was a similar goal to last year, was to try to limit the operational budget to a 6% increase year over year. So basically keeping it from rising above 6% of what we paid for last year. And we were actually, I think pretty lucky with where we ended up. The challenges, obviously, continual obligations to meet, to update our appropriate funds in our capital budget. Things keep getting more expensive as far as police cruisers, fire apparatus, DPW, plow trucks, all of those big ticket items are just kind of continually growing. Healthcare and then salary and benefits are kind of the key drivers there, and we need to keep up with those. And obviously we want to always try to maintain the town's level of services. So the outcome there was very positive. After we got through the budgeting process again over 2.5 months, we came out, and this is if all of the articles pass tomorrow that are on the ballot, at about a 2.96% increase year over year. And if you took those appropriations out, which rose about 16% from last year, the town's operating budget came in just under 2%, so 1.95. So I think everybody was pleased and happy that we were able to kind of keep the increases down at that level. The next slide is really just looking at kind of the year-to-year changes here. So again, it outlines the 1.95% is the percent change from last year to what you're going to vote on for this year's budget. The 16.21% is the amount that the appropriations request went up year over year. And then the 2.96 is if all of those pass tomorrow, we would be at, again, about a 3% increase from last year's budget. And this slide is just looking a little bit at how that fits into the tax rate and how that gets calculated. So this is a process that we go through every July once we have the grand list for the town lodge for the year. And because of that, I have a caveat here that this is just as an example because we know that that grand list will change. So this number is probably not going to be exactly what we're showing here tonight. But I think it gives you a little bit of an idea that for last year, or for the year we're in right now, fiscal year 26, our tax rate was 0.5066. And with the increase, again, of a little under 3% in the total budget, that tax rate is going to be 0.5218. So again, we didn't try to pull an actual tax bill and try to tabulate that because it will change, and we didn't want to have that specifics. But it should be a fairly minor increase to the increase in the rate. All right, and then this is another segue. What we've done in past years is just to try to give everybody a little bit of an idea of kind of the work that's gone on over this past year. So I'm just going to kind of read through the bullet points here and maybe talk a little bit more in detail about a few of these. So obviously I mentioned going through the personnel that are on staff right now that we have had some recent success in kind of stabilizing our personnel and trying to create a fulfilling working environment for folks to attract and retain good employees. The Tracy Hall Improvement Initiative, which folks are probably aware of. This has been kind of an ongoing process that is still ongoing, but we have put away some fairly significant funds into a designated fund for Tracy Hall improvements. We're going to talk a little bit at the end about one of those that we completed, which was a renovation of our heating system over the last year. But that is a process where we have engaged with a local architectural firm, Studio Nexus, and we're actually going to have the principal there come in to a select board meeting here in a few weeks, the second meeting in March, and try to kick the initiative off for what are we going to focus on for this coming year as far as tangible improvements. There was also an updated procurement policy that was adopted by the select board in October, and a select board handbook, which is, I guess, created to serve as a reference guide to all of the applicable Vermont statutes and town governance, and that was adopted in August by the select board. We also created an opioid fund, and this fund is used to collect and ultimately to distribute the funds that the town is receiving through the National Opioid Settlement Fund. So if you're familiar with that, Big Pharma was sued for opioid issues, and all of the not all of the towns, but all of the towns that opted in Vermont receive a small piece of that every year. So we have money set aside, and now a job for the select board in the coming months will be to decide how we as the town want to locally disperse that. We also, this is kind of some things that have happened here recently, a roadway project along Beaver Meadow Road, which widened the shoulders and made them a little more easy to travel for pedestrians or slow-moving bicycles, was completed in the summer of 2025. We also are continuing our mitigation planning for Moore Lane Bridge. We actually have just awarded a contract to a company that is going to come in and try to mill down the pavement above the bridge and remove as much of the leaking emulsion as possible, and then put a membrane down and then repave the bridge. So if you are not familiar with that project, I'm happy to talk a little more about it offline, but that will be hopefully a solution to a recurring problem we have had there. And the other big construction projects that we completed, dating all the way back to July 2023, when we had a major weather events and heavy rainstorms. We had a slope destabilization issue going on Hemlock Road, so that was completed over the summer. We also had 3 culverts that were replaced, like large culverts that had been historically susceptible to flooding, backing up and flooding. So those are all completed. The grant has been closed out. It was a large grant, and I'm happy to say that the town is going to be putting very little, if any, funds into that after everything gets worked out. So that is some good news. One of the other big things that came along in the spring and summer of the previous year was the animal control ordinance. So I know some folks in the audience smiling that probably remember fondly our discussions over I think it was 8 meetings total, and maybe the same or more renditions of an ordinance. So if you can see, our spokesbeagle here is happy that this has occurred, that we've moved on, and I would say that it ultimately, I think, was successful. Nobody walked away completely, I think, satisfied with everything they were hoping for there out of that revised ordinance, but I think a good compromise was found. And then I just have a couple slides here of Huntley Meadow Park. So this is the existing kiosk. We have, as you can see on the photo on the right, a animal control ordinance set of rules that are posted there, and we actually have another kiosk that is waiting for warmer weathers to be installed on the other side by the stairs going down. So that will happen this spring. And then I had mentioned earlier, so one of the big projects that were completed related to Tracy Hall this year, we have a new heating system, and that was converted from a really old oil boiler system where we had 2 boilers that were really susceptible to breaking down, never fully trusting that you would come in and have heat here in the Tracy Hall over the past 2 years. So we now have a really modern, state-of-the-art propane heated system, and I'm going to show you a couple slides here just to give you a visual of what that looks like now. The project included our architectural firm, Studio Nexus. Engineering Services of Vermont was kind of our lead engineer, and then ARC Mechanical was the contracted vendor who came in and actually did the work. And that was substantially completed in October before the heating season began. So these next few slides, again, just a comparison on the left side there. I'm sorry, I'm looking at it backwards here. You have the older system, as you can see, and then a night and day difference between our new system. And this is our mixing tanks, which probably aren't that exciting to most people. The old kind of visual of what you saw as you walked down the stairs down in the heating room from the north wall. Again, a pretty big difference between the old and the new system. And then I thought these might be interesting to people. This is the propane tank getting lifted on a crane into the hole, which is outside of Tracy Hall in the lawn area, burying the hole and covering it up and mulching it. So that is the end of the slideshow. And I will go back over and sit with the select board, and I'm sure there might be some questions or comments. So happy to take those from anyone in the audience. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. So, yeah, we do have a little bit of time for questions or comments directly for the Select Board. And note that when we go over Article 2, you'll have another chance to comment on the budget directly. But Brennan has given the invitation, and I'm sure that the Select Board is more than willing to take any questions you might have at this time. Okay, seeing no questions, Brennan's going to take his machine away, and we are going to welcome Neil Odell, who many of you know from this meeting. Oh, yes. Oh, we do have a question. Yes, sorry. Hold that.
I'm sorry, I'm old and I'm slow.
No, you're all good.
Irv Tomei, 528 New Boston Road. There's some things about the budget as presented in here that I do not understand. And as a preface, I'd like to say that back in the 1990s and early 2000s, this town had an elected finance committee, which was independent of the select board and of the school board, and had the right and responsibility to advise the taxpayers of its considered opinion of both budgets. It was a thankless job, and the lack of thanks eventually led to nobody volunteering to run for election, and so the position became appointed by the select board, but it seems the select board is not content. As I understand it, this past spring, the select board basically said to the finance committee, when we want your opinion, we will ask for it. And that's why, I guess, we don't have an opinion from the Finance Committee in the town report. One of my questions is, I think it's marvelous that you've achieved such a small increase in the total town budget, but I see several positions whose salaries are increasing by well over 5%. Indeed, there's at least one that increased by more than 10%. I think it's the police chief, about a 16% increase. And I'd like to understand better why some of these increases are so large and why it wasn't possible to hold the total increase in the town budget even less than it turns out to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Irv. Somebody want to tackle that on the select board or the town manager?
So I'll answer that. I think if you go through that, you will see that all of the increases in salary were the same, and they were held to right around 5.5% to 6% of an increase. Some of the changes year over year may have been for an under budgeted amount in the previous year, so that would reflect on a higher percentage increase that showed up in this year's budget. But to answer your question, everyone on town staff received the same or very similar increases over the last year. There was no large increase for one individual and not an increase for everyone else. Thanks.
Thank you for the question and the comments, Irv. Okay, we're going to move on to the school board if there's no other questions or comments for the select board at this time. Oh, someone's getting up. We'll wait for you.
Often we will vacate the presenting table.
Right. Okay, we've got a question.
Hello, I'm Christy James. I'm from Farrell Farm Road. I own Farrell Farm with my husband, Bob Sherwin. I am on the Finance Committee, and you did not answer the question that Ed Tomei had presented.
Thank you. Can we get a follow-up on that? The question being specifically, can you clarify what the question is? Maybe just repeat the question. Thank you.
Why the Finance Committee was given the directive back in April to be asked they will be asked to participate on certain projects and not to look at the finances for the town or for the school board as we have done in previous years. So that's my question, and just so the other people here can understand why we don't have an opinion for this year.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. Anyone on the select board or the town manager would like to tackle the question more directly?
Hi, Marcia Calloway. Can you hear me? No? There? Sorry. Historically, the Dresden, I'm trying to remember this because I wrote a memo about it and I did a lot of research. But essentially, the Finance Committee is the Dresden Finance Committee, and the Norwich Finance Committee and the Hanover Finance Committee make up the Dresden Finance Committee. So in order to answer the call for a finance committee, we went back to look at that history, and then I was deputized to reach out to the school board, and they sent back some information because the finance committee had actually been appointed by the select board at the request of certain people in town, and that's not exactly how it was supposed to have been done historically. It was supposed to have been a collaborative appointment by Hanover as well as Norwich school boards. So since that didn't happen, the Hanover School Board wanted to have an opportunity to review the people that had been appointed by the Norwich Select Board, and the Norwich Finance Committee that had been appointed by the Norwich Select Board didn't like that. And so we sort of went round in circles and didn't get anywhere. And so the select board then decided that the best thing to do was to say, all right, at this point, you're advising us because, you know, here we are deep into the year, but we don't want you going to the departments and basically overriding the town manager's work with them, with the departments. And so basically we said, we will give you some assignments when we have need of assignments. And the finance committee suggested one, and we said, go with it, and so they did. And the report came in maybe a couple weeks ago. And that's where we are. So I think the finance committee issue, if it's gonna come to fruition again, should have a different sort of genesis, go back to the old Dresden School agreement that still is in existence, and start afresh. Does that answer your question?
Thanks, Marcia. All right. Oh, we have a couple more. All right. Hold that thought, school board. We'll have to go through these comments.
Ann
Yes.
Sargent, 397 Campbell Flat Road. I served on the Finance Committee when it, after it was an elected position and when it became a appointed group. I believe that it should be looked into from the statutes in Vermont, not necessarily by what Hanover has wanted. If we want to have an opinion for the taxpayers of this town, we need to do it for this town and in accordance with the Vermont statute. If we're going to do something with Dresden, we have to operate under the statute of the Dresden Agreement. But it wouldn't prevent us from giving an opinion. And in my experience, we did not ever go to department heads. Rather, we would ask them for, you know, reports or what they were asking for the next budget year, and to, you know, maybe answer some questions in regards to that in order to form an opinion that we could give to the select board and the town for this meeting. But my understanding is there are some statutes in the state, so I think that should be looked at. Been off the board for a long time, and state statutes change. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Marcia, go ahead.
There are statutes I think it's apples and oranges insofar as the statutes talk about elected finance officers, and what we were looking at was the Dresden Compact that is pretty old, from the John F. Kennedy era, and basically that's what we're working under. So I think if people have a different viewpoint, bring it up to the select board in its new iteration and start fresh.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, Cheryl Lindberg. I've been a long time member of the Finance Committee. Irv Tomei served, Henry Shire, Karen Cahan was on it. We were elected, as Irv said, a while back, and then the statutes didn't support electing Finance Committee members, so the Finance Committee became an appointed committee of the Select Board, and that continued for many years until the school board wanted to have a part in selecting the Finance Committee members if they were in fact going to be weighing in on the school budget as well. So that changed how the process was working. There has never been a way to block a Finance Committee from Norwich to collaborate with the Hanover Finance Committee to become the Dresden Finance Committee. That is in the compact. It is automatic. And for years, we all divvied up the work and went to meetings and came back, and we met with the Hanover Finance Committee as the Dresden Finance Committee, and we have authority to do that. So what needs to be resolved is, if we just are going to have a town finance committee, it will become the committee that should work with the Hanover Finance Committee to comprise the Dresden. And that is the reality of what's been taking place for a long time.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator.
And, I appreciate everybody's patience with this. I do think it is certainly relevant, although our primary agenda tonight obviously is to go through the ballot measures, but this is, I appreciate this being brought up, and I appreciate the Select Board's willingness to engage on it. So, Marcia, go ahead, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, I just want to say that if anybody wants to look at the compact, it's a little bit different than what Cheryl was representing. So it's available. The Select Board can help you ask for it.
Priscilla, go ahead.
May I say something?
Yes.
I think basically there are those with me at this table who were afraid of a competent finance committee that knew more than we did about municipal budgets. And that's been the real resistance.
All right. All right, we're going to move on now, unless I'm missing anybody else. Oh, we do have someone else. Yes, go ahead.
Elliot Harik, 27 Hillside Road. Just returning to Irv's question, I'm looking at the budget, and there's multiple wages, most in fact that are 7.8% increases year on year. So town manager is 6.9, assistant town manager.
Could you speak in the microphone a little bit more, Elliot?
Yeah, the report has most of the town wages increasing by 7.8%, which I think is what was referenced earlier, not 5%. It also caught my eye when looking at it. That's a doubling roughly every 9 years. So the Public Works lead would be making nearly $500,000 in 18 years at this rate. So I'm just curious why the rate was so high across the board, and if that's something we can expect to see year on year going forward, and if so, why? Much higher than COLA for the region.
Thank you. Somebody want to tackle that?
I think I already answered it.
You already answered it, in your view? Okay. Sir, yes?
Maybe just a short answer. Maybe, I don't know if everyone was here at the time, but I wanted the same thing last year, and I didn't hear it responded to last year either.
I'm sorry, can you just clarify what you mean?
The rate of increase.
The rate of increase, okay. Thank you. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Brent.
So, again, throughout the budget process, we went through this a couple different times. What the town employees will see on an annual basis is a 2% step increase that's awarded with a satisfactory review at the anniversary date of their hire. and a cost of living adjustment that happens for all full-time and part-time employees, and that kicks in on July 1st of each year, and that's based on an average for the New England region for COLA. So I would say in the 2 or 3 years that I've been here, that's been roughly 3.5%. So that's 5.5%, which is built into our budgets when we look at the next year. So again, if you're seeing discrepancies there where it's not 5.5%, it's probably due to the year before we had an under budget, and so we've caught up there. I can tell you we have a very sophisticated spreadsheet that was created by the finance office that calculates everybody's wages so we can budget out for the following year when their anniversary date's going to occur, how much that's going to cost the town as far as the wage in the budget. And it's done, very transparently throughout the budget process. So I guess that's the best way I can answer that. It is roughly a 5.5% increase for all the employees, but they will have different anniversary dates. So sometimes the budget will look like one is seeing a higher rate over the course of the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Brennan. Yes, sir.
John Carroll, Campbell Flat Road. I just would like to mostly make an observation. The Select Board is elected by the people. Its duty is the formation of policy and the supervision over town employees through the town manager who works for the Select Board to implement those policies and directives and compliance with state law. I find it discouraging to come here, as we have in several years, and find that the Select Board does not stand up and present its report to the town, and instead turns to its hired employee to do so for them. You own all those numbers up there. You alone are responsible for those decisions. The town manager is not responsible for those decisions. He works for you. He takes your direction. So we are the people here who, through our democratic process and by consent, have elected you. I would ask that in the future, you stand up and deliver and not turn it over to essentially a hired employee. Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right. If I don't have, do I have comments to Mr. Carroll's point here at this point? Seeing none from the board. Oh, Mary, go ahead.
I've been listening. Can you hear me? Yeah, I've been listening. Excuse me? All right. I, for one, have been listening, and I think I'm hearing the concerns. And we'll just try to do better in the coming year. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're past 8 o'clock. We're running maybe a little bit behind, but that's fine. This is the whole point of the meeting, is to engage directly. But we're going to go to Neil Odell, who's a very experienced school board presenter, and he's going to present for 15 to 20 minutes, again with some questions. But remember, we will have another chance when we go through the ballot measures directly to comment on the what's in front of us for the ballot tomorrow. But Neil, you're on. You all set? Ready to go?
Let's invite the rest of the school board up.
Oh, yes. Please, the rest of the school board, come on up. I think, yeah, you take your places. Don't worry, no one's leaving the room. They're just moving chairs and tables. But they'll be here for the comment period when we go through the ballot as well. Appreciate everybody's patience, including those watching on YouTube. All right. Yes.
So is this on?
Yes. Garrett, go ahead.
All right, thank you. So Garrett Palm, I'm the chair of the, I was going to say Norwich Select Board. No, I'm not chair of the Norwich Select Board, Norwich School Board. Sorry, it's been a long day. And to my right, I've got Neil Odell with me, who's helped me on the Finance Committee. He and I were the two Finance Committee members for the Norwich School Board. I've got Michael Acosta and then Lisa Christie. And Gina DeCognier is also our 5th member, and she is in California, I think. She's away tonight, so she can't be here, so sorry about that. And at that point, I'll turn this over to Neil, who does our presentation for us.
Thank you, Garrett.
The umpteenth year. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Welcome, everybody. We'll get the slideshow going. We will start at the end, which is the part that you guys probably all want to know about, and that's the tax rate. Right at this moment in time, we are projecting a tax rate of $1.40, which is just a little bit lower than the tax rate from last year. This is a lot different than the tax rate that you saw on the brochure that showed up at your house. And I apologize for that. The document that you got at the house had an incorrect tax rate in there. We said it was $2.04 in the brochure, which represented a 6.71% increase. That was wrong. We're sorry. Sorry for the confusion. But I figured I would start with the good news, right? So the good news is not that bad, right? So it's going to be a little bit lower from last year. All right, you've seen this before, most of you that have been here for these presentations previously. What are the factors that influence the tax rate? There are 5 of them. First up is the MCS budget, so that's the amount of money that it takes for us to educate our... Aw, dang it. All right, how many times is this going to happen during the presentation? So first up is the MCS budget, so that's the amount of money it takes to educate our kids pre-K through 6 right across the street over at the Marion Cross School. The second is the Dresden budget, so the amount of money that we spend to educate our kids in grades 7 through 12 on the other side of the river, Richmond Middle School and Hanover High School. Third thing is weighted students. So your tax rate is based on how much money we spend per student, more accurately, per weighted student. We weight students because some kids cost a little bit more to educate than others. An example of this is an English language learner. Those students get weighted more than regular students. Shouldn't say regular students. Those students get weighted more than students who have English as their natural language. And so it just accounts for the fact that they cost a little bit more in our system. Fourth are the yield numbers. These are set by the legislature at the end of the legislative session. And as Rebecca talked about previously, these yield numbers are a way for the legislature to make sure that the tax rate raises enough revenue to cover all of the voter-approved school budgets in the state every year. The number that we work with at this stage of the budgeting process, is a forecasted number. The actual yield number gets set at the end of the legislative session. Last is the common level of appraisal, and you all are very familiar with that because I think you're looking at it as we just went through a reappraisal recently, but we'll talk about that toward the end of the presentation. Okay, every year the school board forms a budget committee that develops guidelines that both the school board and the administration use as we go through the budget development process. These budget guidelines attempt to take into consideration known cost increases, things that we know are going to go up, things like any negotiated salary agreements with our dang it. I'm going to quickly grab a power cord to see if that is the thing that's causing this thing to keep going to sleep. Mr. Moderator, does this count against my time?
Not yet.
Not
but
yet.
Neil, you're so good at this, I think you could even do it without it if you had to.
So just while Neil is doing this, I should probably mention a couple of things in my intro that I neglected to. A couple of things that are keeping us awake at night, obviously what Rebecca had said. So she gave you guys very detailed view of what's going on at the state level. That's obviously keeping all of us up at night when we're making these budgets, because these things don't control for these budgets. And you'll get into the potential impact of the foundation formula a little bit. You have a point on that. I do think another thing that I think everyone should be aware of, as far as we have formed, and you're going to talk about this, I don't think, but a capital improvement committee over for the school. So what people may not know is both the high school and the Richmond Middle School have finally come off of their debt from when we built those schools 20, 25 years ago. We are not replacing that right now because of all the uncertainty at the state level, but just so everyone is aware, that's also on the radar, and we have formed a capital improvement committee with a number of non-school board members who expertise our capital improvements over in the Dresden School District. And I think the last thing is, I just wanted to quickly explain, we did have the right numbers. If you guys watched our last school board meeting, we did have the right tax rate. But just as an example of how complex the system is, in the finance office, I believe the discount that we get every year from Act 73 is going down. That discount is also adjusted last year by a new state adjustment rate. You had to basically adjust the discount. So you had a second discount, which was not caught by the finance office, so that was what was causing the issue, just so you have confidence in our numbers. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Garrett. Okay, well, hopefully this will go smoothly for the rest of the way through. Just quickly to summarize here, we set budget guidelines this year of a 3% increase or less on that expenditure budget. Exclusive of any negotiated labor contracts with both our teachers and our support staff, we had successful negotiations with both groups this fall and came to an agreement with them. But when we go into the budgeting process, we don't know how that's going to turn out, right? So when we set the budget guidelines, typically we do that excluding the negotiated settlements. I just wanted to note here too, these guidelines are purely based on the expenditure budget. These guidelines do not apply to the tax rate. When we start this process, we don't have all of the data available to us to be able to forecast a tax rate. It's one of the challenges with the budgeting process. So when we begin all of this work in October, they set the guidelines on the expenditure budget, not the tax rate. We just don't have the data available to us at the time to know what the tax rate will be. Okay, first up, the Marion Cross budget. We are proposing a Marion Cross budget of $8,891,377 for next year. That is an increase of 7.46%. But if you take out the negotiated settlements, that increase is 4.78%. You're saying to yourself, Neil, you did not meet your budget guideline. You are right. But we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. Okay. You can see that our enrollment from this slide has been pretty steady over the last 5 years. And you can also see that some years we get the projection right, like spot on, right? Like last year, right? We forecasted that we were going to have 326 students. We got 326 students. But some years we don't get it right, right? So if you look back at the 1920 school year or the 2021 school year, you could see that the projections and the actuals were a little bit off. I say that because next year may be one of those years where the projection isn't going to be spot on. Our projection model is suggesting 320 students for next year, but when we take a look at the actual number of kids that we have in the building right now, we have a very large graduating 6th grade class. Those kids are going to move over to the middle school next year, and we have a small incoming kindergarten class. So those two things together, the actual number of kids right now that we think will probably be in the building is 299. So I just want to mention that some years we get the projection right, some years we don't. Oh, there's one other thing that I want to note about this as well, too. Oh, no, not this one. Here we go, staffing. Staffing for next year, you'll see we've got a slight decrease in budget to budget staffing. So last year we were budgeting 54.9 FTE or full-time equivalents. Next year, we've got a slight decrease. The number is actually 54.02. It's just that when you round it, the 02 gets dropped off of the graph. Pretty much flat as far as staffing goes. Okay, if we use that 299 number, the number of kids that we actually think are probably going to be in the building next year, this is what the planned class sizes look like. So we've got 2 sections planned for pre-K, kindergarten, 1st and 6th grade, 3 sections for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. One thing that does not show up on this slide, and I want to note, is the pre-K numbers. Pre-K program continues to be a very popular program at Marion Cross. We are fully full with 36 kids in the pre-K program, and we've got 19 on the waiting list. It's a very popular program. We know that this community likes it. We know that. Well, number one, because of the wait list, and number two, because a lot of you showed up during the budget process and told us just how valuable the pre-K program was. All right, moving on to expenditures. We see from this view of the expenditure budget just how much money is spent on regular education and special education. If we take a look at this same budget, but just looking at things by object code, so the accounting term of object code, you see just how much money, how much of the budget is devoted to salaries and benefits. Almost 70% of the Marion Cross budget is salaries and benefits. When we look at expenditures year over year, I just wanted to highlight the bigger changes from this year. The first one, that regular education line item, it's up just over $238,000 this year due to those salary increases, increases in health insurance. On the health insurance side, we made out a little better this year. The health insurance increase was 7.4%. Last year it was 12%. We have been running double-digit health rate increases over the last several years, so it's kind of crazy that I'm standing here saying that 7 is good, but 7 is what it was. Part of the issue, however, though, is that on top of that 7% increase, we also had some staff members switch plans. And so all said and done, at the end of the day, the benefit increases at Marion Cross actually went up, yes, things keeps going in and out on me, by just over 12%. The other thing that is included in this regular education increase are the costs associated with a coordinated elementary English language arts program that we are putting in place at Marion Cross. It's actually going to be dual district-wide. They're doing the same program at the Ray School over in Hanover. We're trying to get some alignment between the two schools that end up feeding both our middle and high schools. Special education is up just over $170,000. A large portion of that is related to a special education tuition placement. The SAU assessment is up just over $42,000. That includes costs necessary to address a budget shortfall that we had in the SAU budget from this current year. School administration is up 3.9%, again, also due to increases in salaries and benefits. And finally, site and building improvements up $18,000, and we're going to touch on that one a bit in just a minute. Revenues, actually overall revenues, if there is a good story this year, it's the revenues. The revenues are up from the prior year. Almost all of that is in the census block grant section there. So a few years ago, Vermont moved to a block grant formula for special education funding, and this year that amount coming to Norwich is up just over $154,000. Okay, as we worked through the budget process this year, those initial drafts came in much higher than our budget guideline of 3%. So we spent a significant amount of time trying to find savings and reductions to get us to that budget guideline goal. We made reductions to technology equipment of $20,000. We trimmed $12,000 from the field trip line, $6,000 from assemblies, and the initial budget proposals actually in all 4 districts included social, dang it. All 4 budgets. So all 4 schools had included a portion of a social worker position in the initial budget proposals. All 4 districts, as we got into the process, decided to forego that addition to the budgets this year. So we trimmed, well, I wouldn't say we trimmed, we did not end up adding the social worker position. In addition to that, we also considered some further reductions. We considered deferring or phasing in that English language arts program that I had mentioned before. It was determined, though, through a lot of discussions that the cost savings that would be presented by doing that were somewhat offset by future cost considerations by not doing it all at once. So the board and the administration determined that that was not a recommended cut. We considered, as I had mentioned before, actually reducing that pre-K program by half. That's when a lot of folks came out to a board meeting and told us that that was a terrible idea, and we agreed, right? It's a very valuable program. Folks that have young children or had young children probably in this town can remember back to the challenges related to childcare, and being able to find places for your kids in that pre-K program. It is a challenge. And so we know how valuable that program is, and the board made the decision to retain that program. We considered a couple of other items for reduction as well, too. Some non-urgent site improvements of $18,000. That was added back into the final budget, and a 0.4 FTE technology integration position. These last 2 items were added back into the budget because of some anticipated headwinds that the board is looking at, and Rebecca spoke to. I'll give you a little bit more detail about that a little bit later. But this is sort of planning for the future. Okay, the next component that influences the tax rate is the Dresden budget. The Dresden budget as proposed is $33,822,795, a 6.42% increase. Went too far. The Dresden assessment, however, so the amount of the Dresden budget that is assessed to the town of Norwich is $9,111,422. That is up 5.89%. You may be asking yourself, wait, if the Dresden budget is up over 6%, why is the assessment only up 5.89%? The Dresden assessment to Norwich depends on the percentage student split between Hanover and Norwich kids that go to the middle and the high school. Every year, that percentage split shifts a little bit. It's a 2-year average. This year, the percentage split slid a little bit more towards Hanover, so a little bit less for Norwich. And so as a result, we don't see that full 6.5% increase. We see 5.89% increase for the assessment. Come on. Too far. All right, the next up is the weighted students. This year we anticipate, or we've been told by the Agency of Education, that our weighted student count is going up 2.8% to 833.35 students. Okay, finally the yield numbers. As mentioned before, the yield numbers is a way for the state to make sure that they raise enough revenue to cover all of the voter-approved budgets in the state of Vermont. The December 1 tax letter that came out gives us a forecast for what we think the yield numbers are going to be, but these actual numbers are not set, not finalized until the end of the legislative session. For purposes of projecting a tax rate, we've got a property yield number of $8,849 and an income yield number of $12,154. Finally, the common level of appraisal. So as the result of the recent revaluation, you can see that our CLA jumped from 61.81 to just over 100% now, 100.23. So that's what happens when you do a revaluation, gang. Okay, there's one more factor in here that was introduced last year. We talked about it briefly. It's called the statewide adjustment. It is designed basically to sort of soften the impact of big swings in the common level of appraisal. And it is accomplished by comparing the local CLA to the statewide average CLA. This year, that statewide adjustment amount is 70.33. And so if we talk about the formula, then we can see how all of this stuff comes together. The property tax rate, you take the per pupil spending, you divide it by the property yield adjusted by the statewide adjustment now to give you your equalized tax rate. This cent discount item that shows up here, Norwich, as the result of Act 127 a few years back, got hit pretty hard by the change in the student weights. And so in order to ease us in to a new, larger tax rate, the state has phased us in with this cent discount. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail on that cent discount, but this is where it gets applied. So we get a cent discount on our tax rate, which gives us our local tax rate divided by our local CLA, which is also adjusted by the statewide adjustment to give you your local tax rate. At this point in the presentation, I would typically walk you through all of those numbers so that you would see what the actual tax rate is. I'm going to skip that this year, but those papers are sitting in the back of the room. So if you're really interested in how all of the numbers work out in the calculation, there are papers in the back of the room that cover all of that. The cent-wide discount you'll see here, it was supposed to be 11 cents, but when we introduced the statewide adjustment needs to be applied to the cent discount. So that ends up turning that 11 cents into a 16-cent discount this year. You can see in 2 more years that discount is going away, if we make it that far, gang. Which is why we end up on this slide. So I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about some public education challenges. There's a lot going on, as Rebecca had mentioned before, about ed reform in Vermont. And what is happening in Montpelier and how this may impact you in the school district and what you can do about it are what I want to talk about next. I have had the privilege, thanks to all of you in this room, well, hopefully all of you in this room, of serving on this local public school board since 2009. I am a firm believer that public education is the foundation for democracy in our country. And I also know that it is a foundational pillar of Vermont's Constitution. Public education is the only governmental service that our Constitution requires. It's important. It's important to me, and I hope it's important to everybody in this room. But I also want to acknowledge that because of that, we sometimes think that we assume that it's always going to be there, that public education is always going to be available to us. If you take that and you also consider our status as part of an interstate school district that literally requires an act of Congress in order to change our structure, you can think that we might be somewhat immune to changes in the system. I'm worried at this moment in time. If you take a look at the things that are being considered both in New Hampshire and Vermont at this moment in time, particularly around how both states fund education, I think that there are some substantial impacts that could happen here in Norwich. And I just want to take a brief moment to share with you a few of those now. I want to start with some basic facts. Property taxes are high, right? I think we all know that. I know it. I'm paying them year over year. They're high. But I also want to acknowledge, too, that here in Norwich, we spend a lot of money on education. At just over $18,000 per student, we are the top education spending town in the state of Vermont. Now, I also want to, boy, what a place to stop, huh? Oh, come on. But I also want to acknowledge, too, that we are one of the top performing, if not the top performing school in the state, right? By any measure out there. So while we spend a lot, the results that we get for what we spend are phenomenal. There are two pieces of legislation that are being considered right now in Montpelier that I think could have a significant impact on Norwich. S220, it proposes to limit education spending for next year's budget cycle. It does that by setting allowable growth amounts for districts based on the difference between what you spend now and the highest spending school district in the state. When you are that highest spending school district in the state, your allowable growth number becomes 0. That is the amount of education spending, according to this proposed bill, that Norwich would be have available to it. Now, I want to add, because it gets a little bit worse than this even, right? Because if the allowable growth is based on the amount of education spending per pupil, if your per pupil, that long-term weighted ADM number goes down, it's in the denominator of the formula. So even for flat budgeting, a decrease in the number of long-term weighted ADM students is going to push your per pupil spending up. If that happens, right, then we're looking at having to make additional cuts out of the budget. A flat budget's not going to do it, right? A flat budget is not going to give you 0% growth if your long-term weighted ADM student number goes down. You're going to have to look at making additional cuts. This is problematic because we all know that salaries and benefits are going to continue to go up. This is going to be very challenging. If this bill passes, next year is going to be an even more challenging budgeting environment than this year.
I want to make sure we have time for questions if there are any, so we got to start wrapping it up, Neil.
I'll wrap it up
Thanks.
with this one, Peter, and then we'll be
Thank
done.
you.
So as Rebecca had mentioned, Act 73 passed last year, aims to transfer Vermont's education system in an effort to both cut costs and improve student outcomes. And you've likely heard in the news that there's this big push for school district consolidation. One of the reasons for the push in the consolidation is because the way that Act 73 was written, it required consolidation before it moved on to the other aspects of the law, in particular the changes to the funding formula. The changes to the funding formula for Norwich can be very impactful. Based on the figures that are included in Act 73, if we move to a foundation formula, Norwich stands to lose about $4.6 million. The potential reduction would get spread out over 5 years. So we're looking at having to cut from the Norwich budget just over $900,000 a year for 4 or 5 years in a row. That's going to be hard. It eliminates the potential for having local budget votes. So as Rebecca had mentioned before, under a foundation formula, the state's going to give us the money and say, figure out how to make it work. There is a provision in there that might allow for a local community to determine whether or not they want to spend more than that allotted amount. The problem is I can't tell you what that would mean for a local tax rate. The data just isn't available to me right now to run those projections to say, if we wanted to make up for the loss in that revenue locally, how bad would that hurt? I don't know. I don't have the answers. We don't know those figures yet. But I am worried that this is going to, have a significant impact on Norwich. If you've got thoughts about this, if you have feelings as to which way this ought to go, whether it's, I really want lower property taxes or please don't do this to my school system, you need to reach out to your legislators, your representatives, your senators, and not just Rebecca and Jim who are in the room tonight. They get a lot of email, and I thank them for reading every single one of those. But there are people that are sitting on House Education and on Senate Education, House Ways and Means, Senate Finance. Those are the four main committees that are driving a lot of these discussions and considerations around education reform in Vermont. And if you're going to reach out, do not leave those people off of the list. If you need a list, that QR code will take you to a list of email addresses for folks on all four of those committees, in addition to Rebecca and Jim and also our senators. Peter, I know that I am over time.
You're great, Neil.
Folks,
Thank you.
I just want to say, we get great value for the money that you put into this system. Our students routinely perform well above the state average, both in math and English language arts. You're looking at percent proficient in math from the spring. You're looking at percent proficient and above in English language arts. You get a lot of value for the money that you invest in this school system, and you should be very proud of it. I want to thank everyone, my board colleagues involved in the budget presentation, administration, so Robin and Teresa in the SAU office, Sean, principal of Marion Cross. But thank you to you guys who've supported this year over year. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Neil. And again, this crucial information and many, many years of doing this, and so you've earned the extra time, Neil. Thank you, and thank you for all of the school board for being here, some of the school board for being here. We'll take questions or comments for the school board directly, and then we'll move into the ballot measures after this. Sir.
Russ North, 65 Tucker Hill Road.
Thank you.
When I moved here 3 years ago, I thought about running for the school board, but then I look at the composition and I realized I ain't any better than any of them. In fact, I'm far less superior. I've served on several school boards. I've chaired many school boards. We have one of the best school boards here in Vermont. And I just think they really deserve praise because it's a thankless job.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I'm also an accountant, so I hate taxes by trade. But our taxes here in Norwich are much like your homeowner's insurance. When I got my reappraisal, and by the way, I'm soliciting offers, part of that value was the quality of our school system. And it's going to become more important as the demographics continue to be against school systems. Vermonters aren't having kids anymore. Look around us. A lot of us are past those years. Young people can't afford to live here. So a quality school district will pay off, and it's just so important to support it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you. Sir.
Hi, Cody Williams, 239 Mitchellbrook Road. As a proud product of public schools in Minnesota and Wisconsin, I just want to say how foundationally important I think public education is to society and our community. And I also specifically want to say thank you so much for all of the work the school board does. And also, this is like the 10 minutes I actually understand the way funding works. So thank you, Neil, for helping for about this 10 minutes every year. And thank all of you in this room and everyone in town for funding such an amazing public school. Thank you.
Thank you, Cody. Sir?
Irv Tomei, 528 New Boston Road. Thank you, Neil. The information sheet did not mention what the income-based school tax will be. And I want to remind everybody, I did a quick calculation based on the formula you put up on the screen. I came up with 3.1466, I think, percent. I want to remind everybody that if your household income qualifies, that instead of paying property tax, there it is, and I did get it right. If your household income does qualify, and I think the threshold's around 100,000 now, that instead of paying property tax on your house plus 2 acres, you can pay this percent of your household income. And that can save you money and make it possible to stay here a while longer, especially since household income does not include the part of your wages, salary and wages that gets taken out by Social Security. Basically, a household income is what the people in your household are legally free to spend. So look it up. Find out more about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Irv.
I am so glad that Irv and I got the same number.
Yes.
Cheryl Lindbergh, 8 Carpenter Street. Back when I had children in the school system, we had much larger classroom sizes. And I feel very strongly that we're getting a private education now on our public dollars. And I have felt that way for a long time. What I would really appreciate the school board to do is to look again at your policy on class sizes and use that to shrink the needs of our school expenses to be appropriate to perhaps meet some of the challenges that you've just brought up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl.
First, thank you, Neil, and the whole school board. And these questions aren't meant to negate all the work you've done. I just want to clarify. When you show in the very beginning slides the spend, when you go to the special ed spending, whether increase or decrease, whatever you're projecting for the year, do you include the offsets for special ed, like Medicare and grants and so forth? Is that just straight spending or spending after calculating the offsets?
The expenditure budget shows just the expenses side, and then you have to take a look at the revenue slide, which would include the revenues, including those associated with those special education reimbursements that we get. So it's purely an expense on one part, and then the revenue slide shows the associated special ed revenues.
It seems a funny way to show it and not have them side by side, just in the future. And then the second relates to the second grade that has 11 kids in 3 classes. Did you consider that they would probably move through 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th at that rate, and it could go to 2 classes for the next 4 years?
I would
still
turn it over.
meet the 18 students, which I think is the cap.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, is the question, did we consider?
Did you consider that you could cut the second grade classrooms to 2, it would keep each class under 18, and that group of kids would move through the next 4 years with 2 classes instead of 3?
Garrett's got his hand up.
Well, yeah, and we can answer the other question as well. So I think you just alluded to it, the woman that was just up. So we did change the policy, I think about 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, to allow the administration to increase the class sizes. So we knew coming down with our budgets in the future that we wanted to be able to have that flexibility. The one thing that we do rely on, though, is if you pick the second grade class, which was a little bit more of a difficult number, but if you take 15 times 3, divide that down by 2, now you're going to end up with a class size of about 22 or 23 kids, which I think if you've been in the schools and look around, that's a large class for one teacher to handle. And what we've done over the years, at least since I've been school board member, which has been 6 years now, we have actually reduced, and Neil might help me here, how many teaching assistants did we used to have? I think in the mid-teens, and now we're down to just a couple. So that's been a way that we've been reducing budget. So right now, in most classrooms, there is just a teacher with no other assistants in that classroom. And then to your point about the second grade, we also rely on our principal to look not only at the class sizes, but the kids in those classes. And we've been told, at least for some of these classes, that depending on the characters in the classes, that some of those class sizes they believe are correct, to have a good learning environment for the other students. And I think, as Rebecca also has pointed out, and keep me honest here, but I believe our teacher to student ratio is actually one of the highest, it's one of the highest in the state. So we've been doing our job, I think, there comfortably. If when you look around at some of the other school districts, they are much, much lower student to teacher ratios. So we've been, even though we spend a lot per kid, we have a very high teacher to student ratio compared to other school districts.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
Yes. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Jane Farrell. I'm at 59 Koch Road, and I moved to Norwich because of the incredible school district. So thank you all for your service and your work. I just want to flag that there's a lot of positive news here, but one challenge that I'm facing personally is that my daughter will turn 4 in September, and she actually didn't get into MCS pre-K this year. And I know that there are 4 or 5 other kids who basically won't have the option to go to MCS pre-K because they'll be funneled directly into K. That's in part because there weren't enough spots in pre-K. So while I know that we have 2 classrooms of 18, and that's wonderful, I would strongly encourage everyone to support expanding pre-K so that it's truly universal, so that there aren't kids who are missing out on this. And I know just talking to other young parents, many of whom can't be out here on a weeknight, they're also just worried. They moved to Norwich. They oftentimes bought, expensive houses with the expectation that, they'd be able to get their kids into this pre-K program, and instead they're going to be spending $20,000 next year, to pay for a private spot in a child care center. So thank you for your work. I hope that we can work going forward to make pre-K truly universal for everyone. And if that's not possible, I would also advocate for removing the sibling preference, which gives preference to kids who are, maybe a full year younger, just because their siblings are enrolled. And from a kind of policy standpoint, I don't understand why that is, and it doesn't seem necessarily like an equitable or reasonable policy. But I'll be at the school board meeting on Wednesday, so we can talk more then. But I wanted to draw your attention to that issue, and thank you all again for your service and work.
Thank you. Thank you. It's getting on near 9 o'clock, so I'm going to move us along. But what I'd rather err on is having a robust discussion, and I think we have had those robust discussions with the select board as well as the school board, and that's what we're doing here tonight. But we also have to go to bed at some point. And I don't want to be here alone reading off the ballot measures of the funding. I want to hear Lucinda and the rest of you and what you have to say. So we're going to move it along, and thank you. So we're going to move to that point. But Garrett, yes. No, I don't think. I think maybe give it to Brendan or whoever. Yeah, I think you're fine. I think it's fine either way. Yeah. Okay, so we are going to move along, and just a reminder, if you want to have side conversations, you're welcome to, but please do it outside so we can move along in our business here, okay? Thank you for that. I appreciate it. All right, the following articles will be voted on by Australian ballot tomorrow, March 3rd, in Tracy Hall. Polls, as I said, open at 7 a.m. and close at 7 p.m. I'm going to go through the ballot measures now. Just a heads up, however, at the end of the ballot measures, we do have a moment where we can discuss non-binding business, and a heads up. I believe Lily, our town clerk, is going to be talking about the possibility, and this was just raised actually a moment ago, of having this town meeting on the weekend, so potentially other people, including parents, who aren't able to make it on weeknights are available. So Lily will be presenting that non-binding discussion at the end of the evening, as well as taking volunteers for tomorrow's voting. So stick around for all of that. Article 1, to elect the following town and school district officers for terms starting in 2026, moderator, 1-year position, town clerk for 3-year position, Town and School District Treasurer for 3 years, Dresden Norwich School Director for 3 years, Norwich School Director for 2 years, Lister for 3 years, Lister for 2 years unexpired term, Select Board members for 3 years, Select Board member for 2 years. I believe this is the position that we don't have candidates officially for. Cemetery Commissioner for 5 years, Trustee of Public Funds for 3 years, Trustee of Public Funds for 2-year unexpired term, Trustee of Public Funds for 1-year unexpired term. Would anyone like to speak to any aspect of this ballot measure? Yes.
Thank you. I'm Pam Smith. I live on New Boston Road. And tomorrow when you go to vote, you will find my name on the ballot as a trustee of public funds for that 1-year unexpired term. But I'm also running as a write-in candidate for the 2-year select board term. And some of you might remember that I was on the Finance Committee in June of 2020. I was one of 4 people who resigned in protest because the Select Board did not value the opinion of the Finance Committee. So if you want a candidate on the Select Board who will strongly advocate for a strong role of the Finance Committee in helping form our budgets, then please write in Pam Smith tomorrow when you vote for 2-year Select Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Oh, excuse me, sorry. Oh.
That's a little better. My name is Robert Gear, and I'm a write-in candidate for the 2-year seat for the Select Board. And just wanted people to be able to put a face to my name and my physique. A little taller, you might recognize me. And the reason I decided to run as a write-in candidate was...
Hey, excuse me, Rob, just if we get the side conversations not take place in the room where other people are trying to speak, I would really appreciate it. Thank you. Go ahead, Rob.
So when I decided to run as a write-in candidate, one of my primary motivations was that previously when I was a Select Board member and prior to that on the Energy Committee and since then as on the Energy Committee, far too little consideration has been given to climate matters in Norwich capital purchases and different actions. And I wanted to be able to make sure that those considerations for improving the climate would be included in every decision, whether or not it was the final decision point or not. They should be considered each time. So that was one of my primary motivations. And then my secondary motivation is I was very excited to see the energy that the current Select Board has and looking forward to serving with them and with the new Select Board member, Brendan, in a productive and collegial environment to get things done as opposed to bickering amongst each other. So I think it's very important that the right Select Board bring the right attitude to all discussions and apply their experience and knowledge. So if you think that's a good idea, my name is Robert Gear, not Richard. Cousin Richard is an actor. I'm Robert Gear, G-E-R-E. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Oh, might need to lower that.
Cheryl Lindberg. I just want to quickly say that I am on the ballot again for a couple of spots, and I'm happy to be contributing my time for those 2 positions. I also, however, wanted to say thank you to Elaine Waterman, who has been a long-time assistant treasurer and helped me through many, many years. And she has retired now from being an assistant treasurer, and I just wanted to acknowledge her and her support for me, and I thank her.
Thank you. Any other comments? Anyone want to speak to Article 1? Anybody else? That's a good question. I appreciate it. Did everyone hear that? Do write-in candidates have to spell their name a certain way? Lily, are you in the house? Omer? Oh, Omer, do you have a thought on that? No. Do write-in candidates have to spell their name a certain way?
I think as long as it's clear.
As long as it's clear. Yeah. As long as it's clear. Matt, yep.
I asked her that same question, and her answer was that as long as it's obvious who you're voting for, if you did Rob or Robert, Pam, Pamela, it's legit.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt. All right. Appreciate that question, important question from the floor. All right, we're going to go to Article 2. Shall the voters approve a gross spending general town budget of $6,855,322? I practiced saying that with my daughter tonight because I could never figure out what do you do with that last part, $322,000? What do you say? Anyway. Plus state and federal grants and gifts consistent with budgeted programs for the period July 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2027. Anybody like to speak to Article 2? Do so now. We did have a fairly robust, as I said, discussion about this, but we are now going through the ballots one by one, so you're welcome to speak now. Yes, sir.
I'm continuing to be Russ North.
Yes, thank you, Russ.
Basically, one thing for everyone to recognize is even though your tax rate is only going up 2 cents, your actual municipal tax bill will be going up much higher because of the increase in appraisal. Because my house went from $300,000 to $500,000. So right there, my taxes are going to go up substantially even if the tax rate remains the same. But on the same side, I'm an accountant. I'm doing taxes right now. Our municipal tax rate is very low. It compensates in large part statewide for our higher education tax. Overall tax burden, we're very close to Hartford.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you. Anybody else on Article 2? Anybody else? Article 2. All right, as I warned everybody, we are going to leap forward to Article 29 because it has to do with the schools. To authorize the Board of School Directors to borrow money by issuance of bonds or notes not in excess of anticipated revenues for the next fiscal year in accordance with the provisions of 16 VSA Section 562(9). Article 29. Would anyone like to speak to Article 29? Seeing no comments, we're going to move on to Article 30. Shall the voters of the Norwich Town School District determine and fix the salaries of the school board members in the sum of $500 each year for a total of $2,500 in accordance with the provisions of 16 VSA Section 562(5). Anyone like to speak to Article 30? Seeing none, we're going to move on to Article 31. Shall the voters of the school district, Norwich School District, approve the school board to expend $8,888,877, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year? We heard a lot of detail about this from Neil, but again, now is the time. If you have any comments, you may make them now. Any comments on Article 31? All right, seeing none, we're going to flip back to Article 3, and the fun begins. Article 3. Shall the town of Norwich appropriate $60,000 to Fund 52, the Emerald Ash Borer Response Fund, to remove ash trees along Norwich's public roads due to the dangerous effects of the widespread EAB infestation? Sir.
Hello, I'm Chris Rimmer. I'll be brief. I'm one of 8 voluntary members of the Emerald Ash Borer Management Subcommittee, it's a mouthful, of the Norwich Conservation Commission. A year ago, we voters authorized a $100,000 appropriation to fund a first round of removals of hazardous ash trees lining our roadways, of which there are many. Norwich has perhaps the highest density of any town in Windsor County, which itself has the highest density of any of Vermont's 14 counties of ash trees. The emerald ash borer, as you likely all know, there's been a lot of outreach by our committee, our subcommittee, and I encourage you to visit the web page of the Norwich Conservation Commission, the Emerald Ash Borer web page. You can learn a lot. But just to refresh you, this little metallic green beetle came over from Asia in wood about 20 years ago. It showed up in Vermont about 8 years ago, in Norwich perhaps 2 to 3 years ago. The infestation is widespread, it's heavy, and trees are beginning to die. They are going to fall on our roadways, on our lines, perhaps on our cars, and we certainly hope not on our residents and others passing through our town. It's a real public safety hazard, and we cannot afford to let it take its course. So the first round of removals will begin this spring with the money that you all approved last year. We are now seeking an appropriation of $60,000 to continue this work next year, later in 2026 or 2027. We recognize that's a big number. It is smaller than the amount we asked last year. We felt that, and frankly, we could be asking for 3 times that much and we still wouldn't get this infestation under control. But we feel that $60,000 is a valid and we hope justifiable number. And I urge you, all of you, and all of us to approve that amount. And please do read up on this if you're at all unsure. There will be a reminder and the listserv digest tomorrow. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else on Article 3? Article 4, shall the voters appropriate $15,947 to advance transit to be used to help cover operating costs and providing matching funds for grants for the support of providing public transportation services? Article 4. Article 5, shall the voters appropriate $32,000 to the Cemetery Commission under 18 VSA Section 5361 to supplement the interest from the Perpetual Care Trust Fund for maintenance of town cemeteries? Yes.
Hi, neighbors. Emily Myers on behalf of the Cemetery Commission. The Cemetery Commission is responsible for maintaining 12 cemeteries in town. It's a lot. So that's why our request is $32,000. It's almost that much every single year to mow, to clean, to repair, to remove trees that are hazardous to, our headstones that, these settlers have been buried in a lot of these cemeteries. And we just want to make sure that we maintain the cemeteries to their best ability, and that's why we're requesting the amount that we are. Here to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. 12 cemeteries. Article 6, shall the voters appropriate $4,348 to the Child Care Center in Norwich to be used for the income-sensitive scholarships for Norwich children? Article 6, anyone care to speak to the Child Care Center in Norwich? Anybody? All right. Article 7, shall the voters appropriate $6,000 to the Family Place to be used for general program support, such amount being reasonably necessary for the support of programs such as direct service through early intervention, child care payment assistance, healthy baby visits, reach up, welcome baby, parent education, playgroups, and other services? Yes.
Hi, my name is Jane Farrell still, and I am very happy to be here on behalf of the board of the Family Place. The Family Place serves as the regional hub of services and support for families with young children throughout the Upper Valley in Vermont and across the river in neighboring towns in New Hampshire. We offer a variety of services and programs delivered in the home, in the communities we serve, and at our campus by caring and compassionate staff who partner with children and their families to work towards their goals and improve long-term outcomes for children. We are asking the voters of Norwich for $6,000, as you mentioned, to support the services provided by the Family Place. In the last year, we provided services to 62 parents and children from Norwich. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Article 8, shall the voters appropriate $3,000 to Good Beginnings of the Upper Valley to be used for the support of programs? Good Beginnings of the Upper Valley. Anybody? Article 9, shall the voters appropriate $1,705 to the Green Mountain Economic Development Corporation to be used to offer support for new, growing, and relocating businesses? Anybody for Article 9? Article 10, shall the voters appropriate $2,500 to Headrest to be used for the operation of a crisis 24/7 hotline? Neil, could you ask those guys to keep it down out there? Thank you. As a professor, nothing bugs me more than just that outside chatter. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Article 11, shall the voters appropriate $3,000 to Junction Arts and Media, JAM, formerly known as CATV, for video recordings of meetings for local government transparency? Anybody from JAM? JAM is here. Thank you, JAM. Article 12, shall the voters appropriate $1,500 to the Norwich American Legion to be used for the Legion's Memorial Day observance? Yes.
Hi, neighbors. Emily Myers again. This is really for a community event. This $1,500 helps support the celebration at the end of Memorial Day observance and ceremony. Hot dogs, drinks, chips, Upper Valley Band, and it's really to bring the community together. So that's what this $1,500 is for.
Thank you. Article 13, shall the voters appropriate $10,000 to Norwich Community Nurse, Inc. to be used for partial financial support of the Norwich Community Nurse, Inc. project? Community nurse.
Brenda Haynes, and I'm on Tucker Hill Road. I'm on the board of the Community Nurse, and I'd like to thank everyone for your support to date. This amount of money represents less than half of the amount of money that we need to run our program, so we really do appreciate the money that you are allocating for this project. And if you have any questions about it, we do have a website and the contact numbers for our community nurse, who is Mary Stevens. Thank you.
Thank you. Article 14, shall the voters appropriate $12,000 to the Norwich Historical Society and Community Center to support those programs that support the celebration of historic events? Sir.
Hi, Jim Westrich. I'm a board member for Norwich Historical Society. I live on Union Village Road. Just first of all, I want to say thank you to the community for supporting Norwich Historical Society for so many years. We care for lots of stuff. Thousands of pictures, objects, books, but even more important is what we do with the stuff. We do lots of programming for the community. We work with students in the Jesuit School District. We do walking tours. This winter, we once again have been doing Discover Norwich, in which we talk about history from 12,000 years ago to 1990s. We do a lot more for the community. We have the garden tour. We've had mural projects and a few other things. The important thing is we know that when people learn about the surroundings, they tend to become more involved in their community, and that's the main mission of the Historical Society.
Thank you. Did anyone notice that Norwich in the 90s looked a lot like Norwich like yesterday? Anyway, Article 15, shall the voters appropriate $395,535 to the Norwich Public Library Association to be used for the operating expenses, of the library? Yes, Lucinda.
God, I'm so short. Hello, everybody. No, it's cool. All right, wow. Okay, can everyone hear me? All right, hi, Lucinda Walker, Brownsville, Vermont, your Norwich Public Library Director. This is my 23rd year, people. 23rd. So you've heard my spiel. Peter, thank you for calling me out. So I'm going to keep it brief, not really. Okay, so here's what I usually talk about. I talk about circulation, because people like numbers. Circulation 20 years ago was about 33,000. We are at 65,000. It is an increase year over year. This town likes to read. It likes to check out audiobooks and magazines and things like American Girl dolls, and anything that we have, they like to check it out. I like to talk about programs. We had 330 programs, and 5,100 people came, which is a 13% increase. I'm going to throw you a fun fact. We had 307 people apply for library cards last year, the most since 2005. We ran out of library cards 2 months early, so some of you newbies might have paper cards because it took 8 weeks to get the new cards. The new cards have arrived, so come on in. So those are the numbers. The one thing I really want to talk about is what we're seeing at the library, which is people are coming in needing to connect. And when I came in tonight and saw all these big, full seats, it made me really happy because I want people to come out and connect. And at the library, with this need to connect, we are trying to offer programs that allow people to learn a new skill or to hear about Patient Choices Vermont or to have their kids come and read graphic novels. We're doing a whole thing on the Light Pirate, which is a seemingly depressing story about life after climate change disaster, but trust me, there's hope at the end. But what I really want to talk about is our memory cafe. Because as I look around, I see some young people, God bless you, but there are people in this town who are having issues with memory loss, and they have caregivers. And it is a very isolating experience for people. And we started in September a monthly memory cafe. It is being underwritten by the Women's Club this year. We are working with the Norwich Nurse. We are working with Senior Solutions and other volunteers in town. I really recommend, if you know anyone who is going through this, I hate to call it a journey, it's a life process, but the library is doing this on the first Monday of every month. Please come, please share this information, because really of the most important connections we've made this year, it is with our people who are going through a lot of stuff. I want to end by saying thank you so much to everyone who supports the library, the board, the volunteers, the friends of the library, everyone who's given grants or donated or voted yes, please vote yes. We're here for you. We are small d democratic as an institution. Everyone is welcome. Bring your baggage, literally or figuratively. We're here for you. We want to help you, and I thank you so much.
We'll bring our baggage. Article 16, shall the voters appropriate $1,822 to the Public Health Council of the Upper Valley to be used for continuing public health education for Norwich residents, particularly in the areas of substance abuse, elder care, oral health, emergency preparedness, and healthy living?
Hi, neighbors. Tracy Hayes, 31 Carpenter Street. I'm also a proud member of the Public Health Council of the Upper Valley. Business administrator. I just wanted to say thank you for the ongoing support annually. We are in Section 3. There's a write-up in Section 3, page 9, has our contact information, our website with a lot of information on what's happening in public health locally. Check that out and contact us for other questions. I'll be here. Thanks.
Thank you. Article 17, shall the voters appropriate $1,200 to Senior Solutions, an area agency on aging, to provide social services benefiting Norwich residents age 60 and older? Senior Solutions. Article 18, shall the voters appropriate $3,750 to SEBCA, Southeastern Vermont Community Action, to be used for emergency needs, referral to and assistance with assessing needed services, financial counseling, and food and nutrition education? Article 18. Any comments? Article 19, shall the voters appropriate $2,000 to the Special Needs Support Center of Upper Valley to help children and adults with special needs and their families meet their unique challenges through advocacy and program support? Special Needs Support Center of the Upper Valley. Article 20, shall the voters appropriate $2,000 to the Upper Valley Trails Alliance to be used for trail planning and work? Anybody want to speak to the Upper Valley Trails Alliance? Pete.
Hi, Peter Griggs, 256 Dutton Hill Road. I'm on the Trail Committee, which is a subcommittee of the Norwich Committee. What is it, Cody? Yeah. Anyway, I want to speak in favor of the Upper Valley Trails Alliance. They help the Trail Committee with a lot of the planning and a lot of the structures that we work on. So they're not just their own entity.
Thank you, Pete. Article 21, shall the voters appropriate $18,500 to the Visiting Nurse Association Hospice of Vermont and New Hampshire to help support the home health, maternal and child health, and hospice care provided in patients' homes and in community settings? Visiting Nurse Association and Hospice of Vermont and New Hampshire. Anybody? Article 22, shall the voters appropriate $5,300 to the White River Council on Aging to be used for home-delivered meals, support, and social services? White River Council on Aging. Article 23, shall the voters appropriate $2,500 to Windsor County Mentors to be used for mentoring youth? Windsor County Mentors. Article 24, shall the voters appropriate $2,500 to WISE, Women's Information Service, to be used to support WISE's crisis intervention and support services and prevention education? Anyone here from WISE or want to speak in support of WISE? Article 25, shall the voters appropriate $3,000 to Youth in Action to be used for operating expenses that support our community service efforts? Youth in Action. Article 26, shall the voters authorize a 5-year extension of the exemption from property taxes previously granted to the Root District Game Club, Inc., parcel ID number 11058.010, under the provisions of 32 VSA Section 3840. Yes.
I'm David Sargent. I'm a board member of the Root District Game Club, and they asked me to speak. In 1952, the Norwich School Board and the Root District Game Club converted the building into a community gathering place. For nearly 75 years, local volunteers have maintained the schoolhouse and made it available for the public for meals, performances, meetings, and other events. The interior remains largely in its original condition. Recent preservation efforts funded by members included a new foundation and roof, restoration of original windows, updated electrical systems, and interior and exterior painting. The club is volunteer-run with open membership and modest dues supporting operating costs. The building is used for small community gatherings and is available to Norwich residents and subject to site logistics. Please vote yes to allowing the Root District Game Club to remain tax exempt. Consider coming in to a potluck, visiting the facility, hosting your kid's birthday party, or enjoying an open music night and meeting some of your neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Article 27, shall the voters authorize a 5-year extension of the exemption from property taxes previously granted to the Beaver Meadow Schoolhouse Association, parcel ID number 03052.000, under the provisions of 32 VSA Section 3840. Yes.
My name is Lindsay Putnam, Chapel Hill Road. I'm on the board of the Beaver Meadow Schoolhouse. I'd like to just tell you a little bit about our community center, which is very similar to what David just described. Beaver Meadow Schoolhouse was the last operating one-room schoolhouse in Norwich. In 1953, the school agreed to sell it to us, the community, for $1, and we agreed to take care of it for the next 75 years or so, maintain it and offer a space for the community. West Norwich is our primary users, but we, really would like to have more of the whole Norwich community come and take part in our events, and indeed it's open to everyone. There is no dues. It's open to whoever would like to come. We do similar events as to what David just described. We have potlucks. We have pizza night at the outdoor pizza oven that the West Norwich community built a few years ago. And it's a wonderful resource. It's a wonderful building, and it's open to anyone. You can contact me if you would like to have an event there. We do concerts, small concerts. We do get-togethers. We do music. We do performing arts. Our income is really all from donations, from grants that we write. So we do need your help with this property tax business. And so we're asking for your support in that. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Peter Stanzel, 578 Chapel Hill Road. I just want to echo everything that Lindsay just said. The schoolhouse has just been a tremendous experience for our children growing up and has really defined this community for us. And I also want to repeat her request for people to consider the schoolhouse for functions or other uses.
Great, thank you. All right, we're at Article 28, which is a big mouthful. I've been practicing this one. Shall the voters require that taxes be paid in U.S. funds in 2 installments? The first installments will be due and accepted at the Town of Norwich Finance Office on or before 4:30 p.m. August 27, 2026, and the balance will be due at the same location on or before 4:30 p.m. February 18, 2027. A legible, official United States Post Office postmark / cancellation, not a postage machine date, mind you, will determine the payment date for all mailed payments. Interest on overdue taxes beginning with the first installment will be charged at 1% per month for the first 3 months and 1.5% per month thereafter. All delinquent taxes will be subject to a 4% collection fee in accordance with Vermont statutes after February 18th, 2027. Would anyone like to speak any more to Article 28? Article 28. All right, we are getting to the end of our time tonight because we've already done Article 29, Article 30, and Article 31. So as I mentioned, we do have time, we always have time to discuss non-binding issues that anyone would like to raise? Looks like we have one starting us off. Yes.
Thank you. John Carroll, Campbell Flat Road. I was somewhat critical of the select board, but I do want to say that I think I personally feel great gratitude to members of the select board, members of the school board. I applaud their commitment and their competence, and I think we are all well served by these essentially volunteer boards. And I want to thank each of the members present and retiring. And I'd like especially to acknowledge Priscilla Vincent, who's retiring from the select board. I think I can relate to Priscilla, not because I'm older than she, but it's harder work for an older person to be engaged in public matters such as this. And Priscilla came to this work with a kind of gentle soul and certainly not a combative person. And sometimes select board work gets pretty tense, pretty hard. And I just want to thank Priscilla for hanging in there, always being courteous and gentle and thoughtful. And we appreciate your service these last many years. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Other non-binding business.
Lily Tryman, 236 Main Street. I'm your town clerk. I have been trying for a couple of years now to move the time and date of this informational hearing. It is allowed to take place anytime in the 30 days before town meeting day. There's been a little bit of interest from the select board in working on moving it. So this is a warning to all you diehards here tonight. Please pay attention to the listserv. Look on the town website. Participate in this process. I think that 7 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. on a night when I have to, with the help of the DPW, flip this gym into a voting space is really tough. So I would really advocate that we move forward in taking advantage of the changes in statute that would allow us to hold this informational hearing on a Saturday afternoon, a couple weeks prior to this. So before you have your town reports, before you start voting 20 days before the election, you might actually get to hear these budget presentations and see the things that you're going to be voting on. So please pay attention to the listserv and weigh in with the select board if you think a move is warranted. Thank you.
Thanks, Lily. Thank you. And speaking of setting up, Lily has mentioned that she'll be meeting volunteers in the, is it my left or your, or who's left? Which way?
If you're willing to stay a little late, you can meet me back there by the voting booth.
That left.
We rearrange this whole room.
Thank you. Any other non-binding business for tonight? All right, so here's where this is the real contentious issue. Are we recessing or are we adjourning? John? We're recessing. I'm with John on this. We are recessing. That is our Norwich tradition because the town meeting continues into tomorrow. It begins again, restarts again because it's the same meeting tomorrow at 7 a.m. Do I have a motion to recess the meeting for tonight? So moved? I see a second. Who moved? I just want to know. Yes, thank you. All in favor? All right, anybody against? Anyone want to stick around? All right, thank you, everybody.